Ciao a tutti.
Hola.
Привет.
Hello.
So between the two of us, we speak 4 languages. She speaks 3 of the 4, and I speak 2. I speak Spanish and English.
And I speak Russian, Italian, and English.
We're at different levels at each one of these. Obviously, I'm a native English speaker. She's a native Russian speaker, and we're at different levels in all the other languages. And we're still learning more. I'm obviously learning Italian here in Italy, and Elena is learning French. And we just wanted to do a little bit different video explaining our experience of learning languages, mainly because we both learned our languages as adults, our non-native languages as adults, and we learned them outside of our target country. And I learned Spanish while living in the US.
And I learned Italian while I was in Russia, and I'm learning English when I'm living in Italy. For me, the main ingredients to study languages are motivation and discipline. For example, when I was young, I was forced to study English, and it was difficult to me because I didn't want. But when I choose language, so I choose Italian to study Italian, it became easily.
For me, even though I've only learned 1 language, my motto is consistency beats efficiency. I'm one of those people who thought I could never learn a second language, especially as an adult, but I started learning Spanish in my late 30s, and I'm in my early 40s now, so I learned that it doesn't really matter if I use the best method. What matters is if I continue to learn, and if I do that, you'll eventually get it no matter what. It really doesn't matter if you find the most efficient method to learn a language if you don't stick with it. So as long as you can stick with the language long enough, you're good to go. So basically in this video, we're going to talk about the 2 input methods and the 2 output methods, which would be input is reading and listening, and output would be writing and speaking, and how we use those in language learning. And then after, we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we've had in our years of learning languages. I'm not sure I want to do this or not, but maybe we'll do a little bit of a language, like, well, I'll speak a little in Spanish, you'll speak in Russian and Italian, and I may speak in a little Italian if I feel comfortable. My Italian is still not great, but
yes,
I'll try some Italian.
I think it will be the most interesting part of this video.
We'll see about that. Okay, so the first input method is reading. For me, I want to emphasize reading out loud. That's something that has really helped me when I was learning Spanish. The very first thing I started doing is I ordered books like this. These are specifically from Ollie Richards, which there's many like this. There's called a graded reader, which means that it's at a certain level. So this one says for beginners, and beginners is considered A1 to A2, and it goes from really A0, which means you know nothing, to C2, which means you're almost a native level, right? Very advanced. I started with these A1, A2 books, and I would read out loud. And it was really important to read out loud because it helped me develop in a sense, the mouth muscles to say the words in Spanish. And I'm doing the same thing with Italian, because even though in your brain, when you're reading, just because you can read something and say it in your brain does not mean that you can say it out loud. I have had many instances where I've had the whole sentence in my head, and then when I tried to get it out, it just kind of like tripped all over itself. So reading out loud was really important for me. Reading in general was good because I derived a lot of my vocabulary from reading. You can ask AI or Google, what are the top 1,000 words, and you can memorize those, but it doesn't really help you as much if you don't know the context and also conjugation. If I just learned one infinitive, I don't necessarily know how to use it, but when I read, I can see the different conjugations, whether it's, first person singular, third person, all that kind of stuff. So reading in general will help use similar words in different conjugations.
I would like to say, yes, okay, you read these books for beginner, graded reading, but we already read together this book.
Yeah, this book is a regular book for native readers. Because I like to read, I do read the graded readers that are at my level, more or less. I want to read a good story as well. And so there's only so much, these are only so interesting, right? So we read this one together, which is a big book, and I would read a page and she would read a page. She would correct me when I was wrong. She'd help. Now, I understand that everybody doesn't have that, the benefit of having a partner who speaks their target language, and I didn't with Spanish. That's just one method I'm doing now, is I'm reading some more advanced books while also reading the lower level books. That way my brain is still somewhat stimulated.
I like also to read aloud graded readers. And first, because they usually shorter books, so I don't get bored, and I can feel I understand what I'm reading. Also, I like to read something what already I read in my native language. So I can understand what about this book. Also, I like to read and recording myself, so I can listen. Or, for example, I had this challenge with my teacher past years ago. So read and put this video on social media. So this for me was very uncomfortable, because to read to myself, it was one thing. So I can read and I can judge myself. Okay, I'm good enough. But when you know somebody can listen to you, listen how you read this, it's difficult. So I remember I did a lot of check before I put this video online, and this forced me to improve.
Yeah, and you would really practice, right?
Yes.
It would force you to practice so that you
Yeah.
to try to do your best so that other people, and that
Yes.
obviously you get the benefit from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next method is writing, which is an output method. And this is the one that I used the least when I was studying Spanish, and I'm using more, probably not enough, but more as I'm studying Italian. But it's really good because it helps with your active thinking as opposed to passive, right? You don't have to necessarily do a lot of work when you're listening, and also when you're reading, somebody else did all the thinking for you. You're just interpreting it. But writing, you have to come up with something out of your own head. And so what I've done this time around is I basically made a prompt with AI and said, give me several topics to talk about for 5 days. And then I write about each one of those topics in English. I translate that from English to Italian, and then I put that back into AI and have it correct all my mistakes, and then give me a grammar lesson on all the mistakes I made and why.
For me, writing is very important, writing by hand. I have a strong mechanical memory, so I remember when I was learning Italian, I had a lot of notebooks, so where I was writing by hand, like this is I'm doing for French. For me, it's very important, and I remember I wrote a lot. Always conjugations of verbs. I chose different topics, like, for example, kitchen, food, family, and for me it was important to write not only one time. I had different notebooks. One notebook was maybe for verbs, another books only for rules, another for words. So I needed to write, and I can say this can help because this is mechanical. Now in this world of everything technology, everything digital, we write less, but I think this is also important, and at least works with me.
For me, it's also really important for spelling. So with Spanish, I feel like it was a little easier because Spanish, it's almost like what it sounds like is exactly how you spell it. You basically just need to know the vowels and you can spell. With Italian, it's not that way. They have like gli, which is like G-L-I. They have double consonants. So some words like casa or casa and casa mean two different things. So C-A-S-S-A versus C-A-S-A mean two different things. So when I hear it, I may hear one way and I may think it's only spelled one way. So I need to take a test eventually with my Italian, and writing is a part of it. So it's much more important for me to write, not just to learn to communicate in the language, but also to learn to write properly in the language when I take that test. Another suggestion about books, by the way, so there's graded readers, there's like more advanced books also, but one suggestion I learned from a guy that when I was learning Spanish, his name's Mike Ben, was to read like children's books. Like there's no shame in that. Like children's books are literally geared towards kids who are learning that language, and so they use very basic vocabulary. They repeat words over and over again. The words are usually like really big and blown up. They have pictures. Go to your donation store, like a Goodwill or something, and you can find a lot of times children's books for super cheap, and you can use those as beginner books to just sound them out. No shame in that. So number 3 is passive input, which would be listening, and this one's my favorite because I love to put things on in the background and listen to them. And with Spanish, I would say this was the thing that helped me the most. So I listened to a ton of music ton of audiobooks, ton of podcasts, anything I could think of. And I had it on almost constantly for a year. I basically completely changed my entire life from English to Spanish as much as I could. Even if I didn't understand, it didn't matter. I would have things on at a very, very basic level, and I would put on very advanced audiobooks because it would help me to hear Spanish so that when I would hear native speakers speak, it wouldn't sound so foreign to me. And it really, really helped me to understand. And I would say to this day, my strongest, I guess, ability in Spanish is listening, is understanding. So if someone's speaking to me in Spanish, even if I can't articulate exactly what I want to say, I pretty much understand 95% of what people are saying in Spanish. And I attributed that to my first year of learning as I just listened to a ton of stuff in Spanish. So the last method is speaking, which is output. And in my opinion, it's the hardest. A lot of times there's a block. It seems like you can say things, you understand things, you can even write things, but when it comes to having a real conversation, it's like your brain just kind of shuts down. Even though this is the hardest one, you don't have to have somebody to speak to. One thing that you can do is speak to yourself. You can talk to yourself in the morning. You can write little subjects to yourself. You can talk to yourself in the car about your day, about your previous day, different things like that.
I think also for me, speaking is most difficult part, and sometimes I see my video and I can notice my mouth, my face like frozen, probably because in other languages it's different. So maybe in my native language I don't need to use a lot of gesticulation. No? For example, in English there are a lot of sounds which is very difficult to me. So yes, to speak.
So I think with speaking, other than speaking to yourself, now also we have the advantage of AI where you can literally have a out loud conversation with AI where you speak to them and it speaks to you. I used to use something called Lingua Talk, I think it was called. I don't use it anymore, but you can literally have a conversation. And there's so many other, you can do your research, but there's so many other resources you can use to speak. With Spanish, I ended up using a couple of applications, one called HelloTalk and one called Tandem to find language partners. The cool thing is not only do you have thousands and thousands of partners to choose from, you can make some real friends. I ended up making friends that to this day, I literally speak to them. I have some friends from Argentina. I have some friends from Chile. So one of the best ways that you can practice is just to use one of these apps to practice with someone and hopefully get out of your comfort zone, especially if you end up making friends. Sometimes, I'm just gonna be real, sometimes it's difficult, right, to find a language partner on these, but if you really care and you really, just like anything, if you put in the effort, there are people on there who really do want to learn languages, and when you find them, it's like, it's precious because like I said, I've met some really cool people that I'm friends with to this day that I still practice my Spanish with.
But yes, I think it's like in real life, it's not easy to find friends, so not you with all people can speak and become friends.
Oh, so as far as speaking goes, another really good way that you can practice speaking is called shadowing. I did shadowing with music. I used to play songs over and over, and I would learn one phrase of the song at a time, and I would basically sing it. I would listen to it over and over and then sing that one part, and then I would just sing that part over and over, and then just because I love this, I just love Hispanic music. That was a form of shadowing, but another form of shadowing is just if you're watching a podcast and you hear a phrase, you just pause it and repeat the phrase and then rewind it and then just keep saying it until you get comfortable saying those different phrases. So one thing we haven't talked about really is grammar, and grammar is super important, and there's debates all over online of is grammar important, is not important, and I think the answer is yes, it is important. But for me, like I said in the beginning, I think consistency is more important than efficiency. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like a lot of grammar, so although I do study grammar, I just kind of do it in my way and I don't prioritize it. But other people, they think grammar is the most important thing, and I think that's great, and that's what they should focus on. The way I studied grammar is I basically find some YouTubers that I like. I watch their grammar videos and I'll just save the ones that I really like and I'll keep listening to that grammar principle over and over, while of course also integrating all those other forms of study, right, with writing and reading, and they all kind of form and eventually make sense. I basically study grammar either by listening to these, or listening and watching these YouTube videos, or if there's a specific principle or something I really am struggling with, if I want to communicate something, and it seems like I always struggle when I say it, that's when I will go online, specifically look up a different subject. Direct and indirect object pronouns were difficult for me, so, and in Italian it's harder.
Yes.
Yes. So that's a grammar topic specifically I went towards because I was struggling with it, but other topics I didn't study as much because I just kind of intuitively got them. Obviously, there's plenty of books out there to study grammar. You can use AI to tell you grammar principles. Of course, teachers will really help you, but I personally like to just watch YouTube lessons and then listen for those grammar principles when I'm listening or reading to other things.
I like structure, so I like to see structure of language. I know Italian. I want to study French, so I'm comparing two languages, grammar
Between each other.
using AI. So I'm asking this tense in Italian. How can I compare how is in French? For me, it's easier to study French comparing on with Italian because they similar languages. Of course, you can't do this with very different languages, but I see it's easier to understand another language when you already know similar language from same group. When I took a few lessons of French, it was in Italy. So teacher was Italian. She was explaining in Italian French language, and I saw how some Italian students struggled with things. For me, it was easy because I was looking on language from outside. For me, both these languages were foreign. For me, it was very fun to see pattern between these two languages.
So with everything, there's challenges, and some of the challenges that we've run into are like boredom, right? When you're studying something and you put your time and effort into it, it gets boring sometimes. And one of the ways that I fought off boredom is with variety. I studied Spanish for the first 6 months diligently, every single day, really hard. And I started to get frustrated because my level wasn't increasing like I thought it should. And eventually I was just getting bored. I watched the YouTube channel and they basically said, find all the things that you like to do in your native language and just do them in your target language. So I love to travel. I had tons of travel vlogs that I would watch and listen to. And I just found a bunch of them in Spanish. So even with books, I would switch books. I would be reading 3 or 4 books at a time. And sometimes when I just would hit a wall with one book, I'd switch to another book and then another book. And then eventually I would go back to the first book. And it just kept me being consistent no matter what.
So unfortunately, the mic decided to die for some reason. So we finished up our last thoughts here, and then we spoke a bit in Italian. I spoke in English, and Elena spoke in Russian, and none of the audio was there for that. So I didn't realize it until later that day or the next day. I can't remember. So we took a walk in the park a couple days later, and we recorded our final audio with us speaking different languages and just showing a little bit of the park. So here's that now. Okay. Unfortunately, the last part of the video that we recorded, the last 2 parts of the video, the audio died. So it was basically us speaking in different languages. And I didn't know that until after we had already cleaned everything up and it was the next day. So we're out. It's a nice, cool autumn day and we're out in the park. So we decided to do the speaking in another language last part of this video in the park. Bueno, esto es mi nivel en español. Pienso que cada día estoy perdiendo muchas palabras. Desde me mudé aquí hace 4, casi 5 meses ahora y traté de hablar o no estudiar, pero traté de hacer las cosas como siempre en español, todos los días. Hago algo en español, pero ahora solo hago las cosas en italiano porque estaba muy confundido, estaba mezclando las palabras y todas las cosas y tuve que parar, estudiar o no estudiar, pero tuve que parar, hacer las cosas, ver los videos, leer cosas así en español porque estaba muy confundido. No podía estudiar italiano y hacer las cosas porque no podía hacer los dos. Pero bueno, y sí, aunque estoy perdiendo las palabras y la fluidez, todavía me siento cómodo en español. Me siento que mi nivel es B2, más o menos. Cuando me siento más cómodo en italiano, cuando tengo un nivel C1, C1, más o menos, voy a regresar a español, a hablar en español y hacer las cosas en español. Y después, quizá francés, ¿no? French, porque Elena está estudiando francés en este momento y estamos muy cerca de la frontera de Francia y nada, ok. Pienso que es suficiente, es mi nivel en español, basta.
Это моя часть на моем родном языке. Мы решили ее записать в парке, прогуливаясь вдоль реки По. Сегодня хороший солнечный день, осень, разноцветные листья деревьев, желто-зеленые, красные. Мне всегда приятно слушать, как Филипп говорит на испанском. Мне это очень нравится. То, что мы любим изучать языки, это нас и свело вместе. Думаю, этого достаточно, чтобы показать мой уровень русского, который, кстати, иногда начинает проседать из-за того, что я постоянно говорю на итальянском. Теперь и стараюсь говорить на английском. Начинаю учить французский, но это интересно наблюдать за своим состоянием. Cerchiamo ogni giorno parlare in italiano, non per caso, ma appositivamente. Di solito succede
Succede cosa?
quando parliamo in italiano.
Sì, ogni giorno cerco di parlare un po' in italiano. Lei mi parla tutti i tempi, tutto il tempo in italiano. Sì, capisco molto, però per me è molto difficile perché a volte quando voglio rispondere mi sento come un bambino, perché ho molte parole che posso usare però in un modo basso. Quando stiamo parlando di le cose quotidiane, no? Quotidiane, sì, non so, parlare con un livello tanto basso, mi sento bambino, quindi a volte non parlo in italiano, solo rispondere lei mi parla in italiano e io rispondere in inglese. Non è bravo per parlare, per migliorare il livello, però piano piano tratto è spagnolo, piano piano cerco di parlare di più in italiano.
Sì, infatti io penso che anche lo spagnolo può aiutarti,
Sì.
come può anche disturbarti.
Esatto, sì.
Sì, quindi però è solamente con la pratica. Nessuno è nato imparato, come si dice, imparando, praticando ogni giorno con piccoli passi
Sì.
si migliora.
Mi sento molto fortunato per avere una persona, mia moglie ovviamente, per praticare, però lo so che non tutto il mondo può parlare ogni giorno con gente, non so, ok, adesso sto perdendo tutto. Ok, prima di uscire stiamo camminando un bel parco, dopo torniamo a casa e cosa?
Torniamo a casa, studiamo, lavoriamo, facciamo il nostro video, però camminando nel parco io vorrei portarti in un posto speciale.
Ok. Portami.
Andiamo!
Andiamo.
Quindi siamo arrivati al posto dove volevo portare Philip e sotto ricostruzione, che si iniziano a fare ricostruzioni, poi durano anni, però va bene. Speriamo.
Con questo perché è bella fontana, no?
Sì, speriamo che qua non durerà anni.
Però mostrala, no?
Sì. Quindi adesso la vedete così, è la scultura principale, poi ogni stato ha il proprio
È
mese.
il nome?
Il nome della fontana, 12 mesi. Quindi è la caratteristica perché appunto ogni stato ha il mese e poi dopo quando la apriranno andremo a cercare un nostro mese.
Va bene. Per adesso ci vediamo. Ciao.
Ciao!